This season of Truly Independent is supported by the Help Them See Foundation. Help Them See is a nonprofit dedicated to supporting feature films that inspire faith, hope, and connection. By partnering with filmmakers, the Help Them See Foundation brings meaningful stories to life and shares them with audiences worldwide, making a lasting cultural impact through the power of cinema. Learn more and discover how you can be part of the movement by visiting helpthemseefoundation.org. Welcome to Season 3 of Truly Independent. I'm Garrett Batty alongside my co-host Daren Smith. Each week, we'll go in-depth with guests, industry experts, and we'll even share our own experiences, all with the goal of demystifying the independent film process. This season, it's all about the script, from the first spark of an idea to a polished final draft, breaking it down for scheduling, budgeting, and ultimately shooting. We'll walk through every step it takes to get from page to production. Welcome to Truly Independent.
Welcome, everybody. Oh, we've got an exciting episode today. Garrett, how the heck are you?
Good, Daren. Nice to see you again. Thanks, everyone, for joining us for another episode of Truly Independent. Daren, I look forward to this every week.
Me too.
But more importantly, we have an incredible guest with us. We want to welcome to the show our dear friend, Matt Whitaker. Matt, how are you?
Doing well. How are you guys doing? Thanks for having me on, man.
Oh,
Thank
so
you.
good.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
for
being
taking.
here.
Yeah, it's a thrill. It's a thrill to have you here, especially this week. It's an incredibly busy week, I would imagine, for you because you have an amazing film that is hitting theaters across the country.
Yeah, Truth and Treason. I'm sure we'll talk about the journey of getting this wonderful little indie film made, but Truth and Treason will hit theaters across Utah and across the country October 17th. And if people want to go see it, go to angel.com/truth. You can enter in your location, your zip code. You can pre-buy tickets or just figure out where it is and go to the theater, man. It's pretty trippy to be saying that out loud. Hey, we're in theaters this Friday.
Isn't that amazing? And Matt, you've done such an incredible job of getting the word out there. And so we want to talk a little bit about that, about the movie itself, the plot, and what it is. And then we also want to ask you about your incredible journey of making this film and how you've basically taken an independent film and made it this incredible phenomenon. All right.
So with that, why don't we go back
Yeah.
to the beginning? Now we're going to demystify your indie film journey for this project. So Matt, take us back. Where did this idea come from and how long ago was the kind of inciting incident for this movie?
Yeah, 2001. I was doing a lot of documentaries at that phase in my career, and was doing a little World War II documentary. My dad was a World War II vet. I've been kind of really obsessed with World War II, and somebody asked me, "Hey, have you heard of Helmut Hubner, this teenager in Nazi Germany who led a resistance group?" And I hadn't. And then they said, "Well, I think the last surviving member of this group lives not very far away from us." So we opened up the phone book, looked up the name Karl Heinz Schnibe, found it, called him on the phone, said, "Hey, can we come over to your house and will you share your story?" And he said, "Yeah, sure, come on over." He was a German. And we went over and he gave us the short version that day. But I remember walking out of his house thinking, "Oh my goodness, I have to share this story." And that was, like I say, that was in 2001. We interviewed him on film, literally shot it on film, 16 millimeter, Super 16, on June 6th, 2001. And I knew I had the makings of a really good PBS documentary just right there. And so we did that. And it was in 2002 that I just started writing, realized it could be so much more than just a documentary, and started writing a feature script.
So you said in 2001, did you make the documentary? You made a PBS documentary?
Yeah. So we made a PBS. We did that first interview on June 6th, 2001 with Carl. And then from there, interviewed anybody who we could find that was still surviving, that had known his best friend, Helmut Hubner. And they were all in this little LDS branch up in Hamburg. And so, yeah, we shot the rest of the documentary. Took Carl actually over to Germany, which was an incredible experience, taking him back to the kind of his old stomping grounds. But even some of the cells that he'd been held in after they were arrested by the Gestapo were still in existence. And so we filmed him walking into some of these cells, and it was really powerful because he he went in there and he could be like, he was doing it really for us because the camera was rolling. But after about 2 minutes, he was like, I got to get out of here. It had been that many years, and still he was in his late 70s at that point. Whereas a 17-year-old, he had been in there as a prisoner, and he just had to step out, had to get out of it again. But it was an incredible experience. Yeah. So we finished that doc in called Truth and Conviction in 2002.
And
And I was
Matt,
already writing the script.
I mean, even getting that doc out, because I remember I have vivid memories of seeing that doc on the shelf, like
Yeah.
on DVD shelves at bookstores or whatever it is,
Yeah.
Truth and Conviction, right? And then seeing it and just going, wow, what a compelling story, what an amazing, obviously well shot, well executed, and but a well told story of this resistance movement, this small. How do you summarize it? The small youth resistance movement against Hitler.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly what it was. Just a group of teenage boys who were peaceful resistance fighters, believed in the power of the written word. Really, their leader, Helmut Hubner, the 16-year-old kid, he was the brains and the leader of this group. And he would type up on this little typewriter, these anti-Hitler, anti-Nazi leaflets. They would sneak into their church because it had a mimeograph machine, and he would crank out copies by the hundreds of his leaflets, and then they would go out at night on the streets of Hamburg and put up these seditious leaflets that contained the truth. And the Gestapo was just obsessed. Especially one member of the Gestapo we know was just obsessed with tracking down who was doing this. They were convinced that it was uh, probably like a university professor of world history or something like that, because they were so incredibly well written, filled with the truth, which the Gestapo knew. Um, and so Helmut Hubner and Karl-Heinz Schnibe, who I knew personally when he was an old man, and Rudy Voba, those were the main three. There were others, but those were the main three of the group. And they operated for about a year before the Gestapo finally caught Helmut at his work. He worked for the Nazis. He worked at the city hall in Hamburg. So by day he's doing that. By night he's a resistance fighter. Um, but yeah, eventually was arrested for his efforts. And then the story gets really, really complicated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which
So Matt,
which
like
yeah, we won't spoil it.
what most filmmakers do when they find a compelling story like this is they instantly want to go make it. And so tell us a little bit, and maybe we'll zoom out to like a 20-year span, and then we can zoom back in on part of it after this. But I'm
Sure.
really curious how you dealt with I'm guessing there was some frustration in there. Like, at what point did you say, I'm going to try to make this feature script? And what were kind of the obstacles you ran up against, and how did you keep pushing through to finally get it almost 20 years later when you finally, had some momentum and got the movie made? So that's a 20-year period. Most people wouldn't stick with a project that long.
Yeah, I've said a number of times I'm either stubborn or stupid or something, but I was, and I say that partly in jest. And I'll share with you. Yeah, there are some really specific reasons why I've stuck with this long, and I'll just be really candid with you. Um, while I was shooting the documentary, had a very powerful experience with Carl, which kind of opened my mind to this idea of, oh, this needs to be a feature film, and actually had a crew member on the documentary at a really key moment ran up to me, stopped my car. I was driving away, and he ran up and he just said, "Hey, you got to make this into a movie, man. You got to do this." It was Justin Andrews. You may know Justin. He was our gaffer, and he says, "This is going to be this is be a great movie." And that planted that seed. This was in 2002, and I went home that night and said, I'm just going to try and write the first pages of a script and just see if anything comes out. And it just poured out of me. Like I wrote
Spilled
like
out.
10 pages. Yeah, just like 10 pages, which again, those are not in the script anymore, but it was just like this original thing. And I just thought, oh my gosh, there is something here. But my plan really at that point was just to be the screenwriter. I partnered up with Ethan Vincent, who was my editor on the documentary.
Yeah.
Also, gifted writer, screenwriter, and filmmaker himself. But we started writing together. But really, it was just we actually had a big producer down in LA who had optioned the project. There was another director attached. We were just the writers for a number of years. And it was actually in 2005 when, I don't know if you've ever had one of those experiences where you just feel something in your heart, feel something in your gut that's just so powerful and I just had one of those things where I just felt, I know this story better than, right now, I know this story better than anybody else on the planet, and I'm supposed to be the one to direct this. And
Wow.
it was such a powerful experience that I went home to my wife that night and I shared it with her. And I can remember saying, hon, because she was immediately supportive. And I
Yeah.
remember saying, this could take a couple years, you know, um, you know, 20 years
20
later.
years later.
Yeah, yeah. But
Couple
Wow.
years.
Wow.
but
You know what
it
that
really
means.
it does go back to that experience, and I found it fascinating since then that we, all of us humans make really big decisions based on feelings, and who we're going to marry, just a lot of things based on a feeling, and that for me was this one. It's like every time after that, because we've had plenty of really hard setbacks over the years, I would go back to that, sometimes my wife would come bring me back to it. It's like, do you remember what happened? Do you still feel like you're supposed to do this? And I had to, if I'm honest with myself, I had to admit, yes, I do. I feel like I'm supposed to do this, even though there were plenty of times where I was like, I am so sick of this, or I've traded my whole career for this project and it's not going to happen. All those things. It's just, again, just the reality of it. But then there would be these little, you know, just these little things that would happen that were enough to keep me going, enough to say, no, there's a reason that we're trying to do this. This story is worth telling. Carl, the last surviving member who passed away in 2010, entrusted us with telling this story, asked us to tell it. And so, it's like, okay, I can't stop now. And from this is, again, indie filmmakers will get this as well. One of our earliest investors was my cousin, and he put in a chunk of money that eventually got spent in development. And there was like, I can't back out. My cousin's invested in this. He's put a bunch of money in this. I have to keep going. So there were a number. That's a kind of again, more of a logistical or financial motivation to keep doing it. But it really was I just hearkening back to that really strong feeling I had on August 13th, 2005. I know exactly the day that it was.
That's
um,
amazing.
it kind of became this marker. The first year is like August 13th, okay, we're still going. The next year is like, whew, August 13th is 2 years in. The next year I was like, it was kind of like at family reunions. At first, when you announce, hey, we're gonna make this film, we're gonna do this, that documentary, we're gonna make it into a movie, and everybody at the family reunion is excited. The next year they're like, yeah, this is gonna be great. The next year they're like, still going on that?
Yeah. Yeah. How's that
Hey,
movie thing coming?
boy, you're doing great, Matt. And then, after that, then they just stop asking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in my experience, there have been, every project has their speed bumps or stoppages, but like you say, there are these little tokens that show up and say, okay, this is the right path, or we're going to continue to work on this and make this. Um, can you share maybe some of those indicators where you feel like, okay, this is not just me being stubborn, like I'm still kind of called or compelled to make this. I have conviction to make this.
And I will have to say that there's whether you call it a metaphysical or a spiritual aspect to this.
Sure.
There definitely has been from me from that get go. And so as I share these, those have been, well, let me put it this way. First, there have been, again, like financial things where a big investor would come in, and
Hmm.
so that was like, oh, okay, this is going to happen. We got somebody just came in with a $3 million commitment. Okay, this is going to happen. And, the ones that would hit the deepest for me were, there was one point where I was actually sitting in church, and it was after our investors had just pulled out and things were just really at a really low point in this. And I was literally sitting there thinking, I have traded, I put all my eggs in this
Yeah.
basket. I've traded my career for this. Now I'm an old man with a white beard and I still don't have anything to show for it. I was really in a dark place, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And I felt like I couldn't get out of it because all these people of family and had put money into it. And, it was just like I felt trapped. And sitting in church and they had sang the closing hymn and somebody said a prayer. And I just, I was so consumed with this kind of darkness that was on me. The prayer ended and this man was sitting next to me. And I didn't know him very well. We had spoken a few times, but that was it. And he leaned over right after the prayer and he just whispered to me. He said, I feel to tell you that God is in the work that you're doing and you need to stick with it. And I don't know what that means. And yeah,
Yeah.
just hammered me because I knew I knew exactly what it meant. Um,
Yeah.
and then this darkness just like immediately lifted. It really was. It was just kind of like, oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
So things like that. And there are other experiences similar to that happened to me over the years, kind of spread out at points over the years when I was about ready to give up or felt like I totally wanted to give up, but didn't know how. I didn't know how to stop because we were so deep into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So experiences like that.
Wow.
Well, Daren, in an effort to demystify the indie film experience, I feel like we've absolutely mystified it, or spiritualized it.
Yeah.
So maybe we failed in our effort with this podcast, with this episode.
Yeah.
But what's crazy, Matt, is I can relate 100% to
Yeah.
what you're going through, and I say that with the utmost respect of you. This is a 25-year journey for you, so I wouldn't ever want to discount what that is. But these moments as an independent filmmaker where you just say, what am I doing? I'm ready. I mean, I had one just this past week at lunch with somebody where, you tell them your story of like, yeah, I've been doing this for 20 years and made certain films. But I mean, frequently I have those late night conversations with my wife to say, what are we even doing? Like, what?
Yeah.
Let's just give up and be a brain surgeon. It'd be much easier.
Yeah.
Right. And in sharing that story with him, he made it very clear. He's like, no, 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 no. What you're doing is you need to keep doing. And boy, I mean, per this episode, that conviction word keeps coming up in my mind. That's what you had. That's what enabled you to continue to go. So, at what point then? Here we are now, opening weekend for an independent filmmaker to listen to this and say, okay, well, when did you know? What was the turning point where you go, oh, okay, we're actually going to make this movie?
Several years ago, we partnered got a distributor. That's in the indie world, as you guys know, you almost never have a distributor before you've shot the film. But we partnered with Angel Studios. We had talked to them and met with them about the project. They loved it. They actually asked us to expand it out into like a 4-part limited series, which I did. I wrote, took a 90-page script and made it into 180 pages, which was
Wow.
wonderful. So fun to dive deeper into the different storylines and really, augment the story. But with Angel Studios, I'm not sure if you're very familiar with them, but their model is at the time was just all about crowdfunding. They had this, and so we were gonna raise all our money through this crowdfunding thing. They'd kind of cracked that nut. They'd raised more than any other media or film related thing had through crowdfunding. They'd had a huge success with The Chosen, so we did that, and it didn't work very well.
Oh,
did the crowdfunding thing and raised kind of like our minimums. We barely made our minimums. It just like their model has changed over the years. They kind of found like it works for certain things, but doesn't work for others.
yeah,
And but they were also instrumental. So we were heavily engaged in finding our own private equity. Angel Studios was also very involved in trying to match us up with with other private equity investors that were just interested in angel projects.
yeah.
And so it really it was financing that was cobbled together, really. But there was a point, so in 2023, when things were just not, even with Angel working with us and everything like that, things were not coming together as everybody hoped, and had a really important discussion with the president of Angel Studios, with Jordan Harmon, and Jordan said, "Hey Matt, you guys are going to be shooting this Truth and Treason next year, period." And he said it like that, and so I really appreciated that. They were wholly committed to helping us figure that out. So I understand that that's not a trajectory that a lot of indie filmmakers have, but the fact that we were able to get a distributor on board for a project that hadn't been shot yet, who was also very motivated to help us finish out the financing on it. So, it was, having said that, again, this is an indie thing. So even when we were saying, okay, well, we're setting a start date in Lithuania, we're going to go scout locations, and that whole process, we still didn't have all of the money in place. And but it is one of those things where you guys know this. At some point, the train leaves the station,
Yeah.
and sometimes that has to happen in order to just make it happen, and you trust the process, and you know that you're still at risk here, and I don't know if I would recommend that for everybody, but we went into pre-production without all of our financing totally committed. And then it got more interesting from there, which we can talk about if you'd like.
Yeah, it does seem though that, there's different thresholds for whether it's collaborators, distributors, partners, investors, and you just have to keep going with or without them. And at some point you hit their threshold where they go, "Oh, I better get on board or else I'm going to miss this train." And that's
Yeah.
part of the faith that's required and the conviction that's required in indie filmmaking a lot of the time.
Yeah, it is. And I'll say again, in the spirit of demystifying some things, one of the huge expenses and really important parts of the process in getting a partnership with a distribution company, whether you're doing it before you guys, before you shoot, before somebody shoots their film, or before or after, is getting the right legal team with you,
Mm-hmm.
getting the right legal help, and then that's an expensive, never-ending process. At least that's been our experience. It's just, again, when you're especially when you're this is a, for a little indie film, but our budget, because it expanded out to a 4-part series, and then we also ended up kind of backing into this 2-hour version that's being released theatrically, which is so good.
Right.
Stands on its own, but now also, so we get both the 2-hour version and this 4-hour version, but our budget went up, a lot because of that. And so now we were talking about spending $8 million, to get this series made. And so it was, when you start getting into that, any amount of money, but when you start getting into that range of money, the legal costs just go up. We couldn't afford to have a budget attorney, if that makes sense. We had to have a real entertainment attorney who really knew what they were doing, as we were delving into the complexities with Angel Studios, with a company who at that time had just had their huge Sound of Freedom hit, $250 million. All of a sudden, tons of money is interested in coming into them, and we're working. Our little project is trying to make sure that we're set up properly with that, and so we spent and are still spending money, legal, for a legal team that can really that knows what they're doing and can represent our project, can represent us on a pretty big stage.
Wow.
I think that's an important tip, Matt, and I'm glad you shared that. I mean, I think in a lot of the films that I'm doing, or that are independent, they're kind of in that sub-million or $1 to $2 million range. And so oftentimes we look for ways to save or I don't say cut corners, but at least be efficient.
Sure.
And maybe we don't give enough onus to the legal side of things. And now as you're, yeah, so that's so helpful and and very good counsel.
Thank you. Yeah, and again, find the right one. Not everybody it has to be as expensive as it has been for us. But it's a big project. It's a little
Sure,
indie film, but it's a big project, and
sure.
Yeah.
and so it had to be done right.
Okay, so you mentioned you shot in Lithuania. Can you just tell us a little bit about that experience and what that felt like? Maybe that first day on set or
Yeah.
a moment on set where you pinch yourself and you're like, okay, we're doing it. This is happening.
Yeah. So we had shot, when I say we, so Kaleidoscope Pictures, who I've partnered with and have done work with them for many years. Um, Russ Kendall and John Foss being my producing partners on this. Um, uh, they had shot two other films in Lithuania, both which I had been involved with. The second one, Instrument of War, I wrote the screenplay for that. It was another World War II movie. And it was actually while I was over there on that one that I started scouting locations for this. Even though that was 8 years ago, it was back in
Yeah.
2016 when we were shooting there. I was already 11 plus years into this project, and so I was looking at the locations and actually hired a location scout while we were there back in 2016. And so we've had a great partnership with an in-country production entity, Baltic Films, and so we just knew that this was going to be the right place to shoot it. And so just kind of continued. And once it got closer to us realizing, okay, we're going to be shooting this spring, then we really started having a lot of meetings with Baltic Films, with our producers there, to start kind of them hiring. We knew that we were going to go over and have almost exclusively a Lithuanian crew. Lithuania, by the way, another incentive there, besides the fact that they had perfect locations and a really good crew, they have a tax incentive.
Do they really now?
Yeah, 30% tax incentive, and it's a really good one.
Yeah.
We were getting, just jumping forward a little bit, but we were getting money back on our spend while we were still in production.
Is that right?
Yeah, it was, which again, then we were just rolling back into the
Yeah,
production.
it immediately goes in through
Yeah,
the
so
lawyers, making sure that all.
that's
Yeah,
again,
that's smart.
attorneys are just involved in all of that, but it was an incredible experience. We were casting out of the UK, so it's a German story, but we knew we wanted to tell it in do it in English, and so we cast out of the UK. An incredible, the main characters are these four young boys, four teenage boys, and so I knew we were going to be casting young actors, but also the Gestapo agent, who is the other half of the story that we tell. And again, all British cast that we were doing. We started that before we went. So in November and December, we started the casting process out of, hired a London-based casting director. And
Who'd you use? May I ask who you used?
yeah, Sarah Trevis.
Okay.
She's fantastic. She actually, in their earliest iteration of this back in 2007, we went over and hired her, cast some actors. We thought we were this close. This was before the world housing market collapsed and we lost all of our investors. And so we come back to her all these years later, almost 20 years later, saying, "Hey, we're still making this movie. Will you be our casting director?" She was incredible.
Well,
Wow.
that says a lot about your team that she didn't say you again.
Yeah, no,
She said, "Yeah, let's do it." That's great.
it was really just a little side note on that. Again, so 2006, 2007, when we were doing initial casting with her, and we come back in 2024, end of 23 and 24, and one of the actors that came in, really good young actor. We ended up casting him not for one of the main four boy roles, but for another really important role. And
Cool.
somewhere in that process, we figured out, oh, this is her son. she didn't say anything, and he has a different last name and everything. But we realized, and he had been, when we were casting with her, he's a twin. She had baby twins when we were casting with her back in 2006, 2007. And then we end up casting one of her babies. And he's
Jeez.
fantastic in the film. Yeah. So
Oh, good. Oh,
anyway,
that's
that casting process, which continued throughout when we went over, my wife and my daughter and I moved over to Lithuania at the end of February of 2024. We knew we were going to be there for about 5 months for prep and shooting and wrapping out. And so the casting process wasn't done yet. So there were a number of trips to London from Vilnius, Lithuania, as we were, just trying to. It's a pretty big cast for this kind of a film, and so just trying to, that whole process, which I loved. One of the things that was really important to me, so much of casting now happens just remotely. Actors send self tapes, then the casting director brings them into her office, but the director is wherever he lives, and it's all done remotely and just watching and talking through screens and stuff. And I just feel like you miss something there. And so it was really important to our team. We did the self tape thing, but then from there we narrowed it down to the actors, like in each role, maybe 6 or 7 are top, in each role. And then we went to London for in-person callbacks. And it was really interesting to see these actors, some of them, because there were a lot of young actors who had never been to a callback with the director in the room. I couldn't believe it. Yeah.
wow.
Some
Holy
of them were
cow.
more nervous. It's like, oh, the directors, you came from the United States.
Yeah,
It was a key part of the process for us,
that's
and
cool.
be able to find these young actors who could, we needed to find a kid who could play a 16-year-old that could carry this film and this series, and we did.
And you certainly did. Yeah, you certainly did.
Yeah,
Definitely
Ewan
did.
Horrocks is just incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Matt, along this, we're pushing 25 years, 23 years, something like that. I don't do public math. It's been over 20 years since you started on this project.
Yes.
Has there been a moment yet for you where all of the tension and all of the frustration and all of the buildup over that time finally kind of released, and you got that moment of, okay, I did the thing I was called to do all those years ago?
Yeah, it was when we kind of finished the final watch through of the feature version, where the colorist had done her beautiful work on it. The sound design team had done their work, and it came together, and we were watching this film. Yeah, it's hard for me to talk about still. It was just Russ, John, and I, and Ethan Vincent, my co-writer, and my wife Nisia, just all looking at each other and going, "Here we are."
Yeah.
It's because it's despite the 20+ year journey, it was a real possibility that we could go through this whole process and then end up with a film that you go, dang, oh, it's pretty good. It's a pretty good movie, guys. It could have been that, which would have been
Sure.
horrible. But we've ended up with something that I can tell is genuine. It's a film that I'm proud of, and that's rare for me with my own work. It's a film that I'm proud of. It's like, oh, and I think that it honors Helmut and Carl and Rudy and Solomon, their Jewish friend. I think, and people are being moved by it, and that is just. I'm still in that stage because I'm still in that stage where I'm pinching myself and just saying, oh my goodness, it's actually happening.
Matt,
Yeah.
that's cool. I'm glad that you've had that you do feel that, and I think that is that moment here, the week of your release. That moment probably makes this week a little bit more enjoyable. Like, hey, I've had that, and I know it's a good movie and stuff like that. I was grateful to be able to watch this movie at an influencer screening a few weeks ago, and
Yeah.
was blown away certainly by what you were able to pull off and the way you executed the movie. Every detail is so well executed. Um, and but additionally, I was amazed at the relevance. Here you are as a story that started 20 years ago and felt like was made specifically for this specific moment in time that we're in. Can you comment on that without spoiling much of the movie?
Yeah, yeah, it's a good question. 20 years ago, we were literally saying, "Boy, it's so timely right now. It's so timely. This film needs to come out now." And that was nothing. As
I
we're
had no
looking,
idea.
yeah, no, as we're looking at a story about someone who stands up to an authoritarian leader, and when when the airwaves are filled with half truths, twisted truths, propaganda, um, and and he's standing up to that. When we see, I'll just say this. So we on a final screening, where it was just Bianca, our cinematographer, and I can't say enough about Bianca Klein. Oh my goodness, she just
Incredible.
knocked this out of the park. But we were doing a final screening just about a week and a half ago, and she invited a friend to come see it with her, and I just got to say hi before, and then we started it and watched the film through. And at the end, her friend just broke down. I mean, just really broke down and was kind of sobbing as the closing credits started. And more than people, usually people are weeping, but she was just really breaking down. And we were just kind of quiet there. And Bianca whispered to me, she said, "She's from Ukraine." And then I said, "Oh, okay. I get it. I think I understand why this is hitting so deeply for her right now, where an authoritarian leader has invaded her country." But then she said something. She said, "It's not just about what's happening in my country. It's about what's happening in this country right now."
Yeah.
And that really struck me. And I'm seeing it, and I just think, yeah, I think that this film is timely. And I have to say, at the end of the day, it's just a movie. I mean, for me, it's my career, but it is just a movie. It's a 2-hour story that people are going to go see. It's a true story, but every once in a while, there is a film that comes along that connects to the zeitgeist, that makes a difference, um, and and maybe this one can be one of those. I do feel like it's definitely coming out when it is supposed to come out.
That's
I think
awesome.
it is, and this is maybe a conversation for a sequel episode. But I think the reason we do this as independent filmmakers is like there's that goal of like, hey, I made the documentary, and people go, oh, now it needs to be a film, or here's an amazing book, and now it needs to be a film, or whatever it is, the short story that has to be a film. And I believe that film defines culture. Like culture is defined by film and influences in a way that no other medium or format can.
Yeah.
And so for you to say, I would agree 100% and say, okay, it isn't just a movie. I wouldn't discount it as it isn't just a movie. It's a cultural defining piece of art that I think that is being positioned where it needs to be right now. And I'm excited that it is. I really am.
Thank you. Yeah, and I do believe in the power of story, whether it's film or story changes the world.
Yeah.
And for me, particularly true stories um, can change the world. And again, I'm so in the thick of it right now that I do have a hard time kind of really comprehending that this could be one of those. Other people, and I'm so grateful to hear it, are telling me that. And wouldn't it be something if that were the case, and if it could do some good, if it
Yeah.
could impact some lives, and uh, and and help people to ask themselves the questions that I've been asking myself since I found this story, which are, what would I have done if I were
Hmm.
Helen? And then what will I do now? If it can do that,
Mm.
man, that would be a success for me.
I think you've done it right too, Matt. Even as a filmmaker and a storyteller, you say this: we're telling the story, right? To approach this as, hey, we're gonna try to move the needle, or that would be the wrong approach. And I'm so
Not a
grateful that
message film. It's
you
not.
told it. Yep, it's not a message film. It doesn't ever come across that way. But my goodness, I know my son and I watched it, and he is still moved today to. I
Mm.
mean, he's a 14-year-old kid, and got
That means a ton.
depth
That means a ton.
and meaning out of it, and he just says, "Wow, that was like I gotta be more like that guy." Like,
that means a ton. If it's great if the boomers and the X gens and even you older millennials will enjoy it. But if I hear, when and I have been hearing that the teenagers coming. I just talked to a 16-year-old on 2 days ago, who at a festival, and he came to see it, which I thought was great. And he just said, I think it's the best movie I've ever seen. I want to be a better person. He was trying to
Yeah.
kind of articulate, and that means the world. He was the same age as Helmut was, when he was doing that. So
Yeah.
Jeez. That's amazing. It impacted me. I'm excited to take my family to go see it. I think this is going to be one of those. So I'm excited to see how it plays out starting this weekend, Matt. You've made it.
yeah, out in theaters, and the cool thing is that, like I said, because we shot the 4-part series, but then created this feature version, but we still get to release. Angel's going to release the 4-part series, so
Oh, good.
if people go see the film, they'll at the end of it they'll have an opportunity to figure out how they can access the series,
Wow.
or if they're in the Angel Guild, they'll be able to watch the first 2 episodes that same night. They can go home and watch and just dive deeper into the characters and into the story that same night. So it's really
How
cool.
cool is
I
that?
think it's kind of a groundbreaking process. We'll see. It seems like it's going to work. I hope it does. I hope people go out and see it and then want more.
Amazing.
I know. Yeah. Well, good. Well, incredible, Matt. So, if there's a takeaway then for our audience, if you say, "Hey, independent filmmakers, here's my takeaway that applies to what we're doing as far as trying to get these stories out there," what can you share with us? What is it?
I'm always a little bit hesitant to say this because what works for me isn't going to work for everybody else. And I would say that one thing that's really important for anybody, but a filmmaker, um, especially an indie filmmaker, is a healthy sense of self-awareness, to understand if you have a realistic chance, if you're trying to tell a story, or if you're trying to create something, that you've got a realistic chance of being able to do. Are you qualified to do it? Have you put in the blood, sweat, and tears in a script that has been torn apart and reworked and reworked and reworked, so that script is so good that it's going to attract the kind of talent that it needs to be, it needs to have. If you're going out and trying to find script writers and saying, hey, I've got this project, do you want to, if you're going out to somebody and trying to say, hey, this is my dream, come be a part of my dream, that's a really tough one. But if you're putting in the work, and if you're trying to direct things so that you're honing your own skills and not just hoping that, hey, this is going to fall into place, if you've got that kind of self-awareness, then the advice I would give is follow your gut.
Mm, mm,
Whatever's really deep in your heart. And again, if you want to explain that in a metaphysical sense of, spiritual direction, or just something that you feel in your bones, it's a story that I have to tell, then do it. But make sure you're being self-aware. Make sure you're being honest with yourself, and that you're listening to feedback. Unfortunately, I have some dear friends who have their dream project, and I never feel qualified to say, you're not based in reality here, friend, because people can look at me and say, Matt, you've been at this. I had family members, 15 years in. Matt, you need to be providing for your family. I get it. So, but I would just say, if there's a healthy sense of self-awareness, then follow your gut and keep going. And eventually, now I can say that eventually, it'll happen.
So happy for you, man. Like, we've been tracking this for years as well. We've known you for a long time and have just been so pleased with every update and every photo from set and every new milestone reached, and like could not be happier for you. And it couldn't happen to a greater guy. So I'm just excited for you personally, but also for the movie and this story being able to get out there and impact people.
Thank you. Very, very kind of you. I love what you guys are doing. I know we're all filmmakers just trying to tell stories that mean something. So I
yeah.
appreciate it.
Well, keep it up. Best of luck with the release this week, and we cannot wait to post this episode and invite all of our listeners and supporters to check out Truth and Treason. It will be in a theater near you because it's from Angel.
Yeah. Yeah. It's across the country, being
Yeah,
1,500 to 2,000 theaters. So
amazing.
I have to say
And
that out loud.
well deserved. Amazing conversation. Thank you, Matt, for being here. And Guys, go and check out the movie. Please, please, please go support it.
Thank you.
We'll see you next week. This season of Truly Independent is supported by the Help Them See Foundation. Help Them See is a nonprofit dedicated to supporting feature films that inspire faith, hope, and connection. By partnering with filmmakers, the Help Them See Foundation brings meaningful stories to life and shares them with audiences worldwide, making a lasting cultural impact through the power of cinema. Learn more and discover how you can be part of the movement by visiting helpthemseefoundation.org. Thanks for joining us. If you are enjoying Truly Independent, please share and subscribe so you don't miss the rest of the journey. Today's episode was edited by Michael Bradford and produced by 3 Coin Productions.